All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in and find a seat. It's good to see everybody here today. We're going to get in the Bible in a little bit, but Mrs. Smith has found her place right there at the piano, and so let's find our place in the hymn books, and we'll take some favorite classic hymns tonight. They don't have to be carols, but you could choose a carol if you want to. That's all right. That's okay. That's okay. Does anybody have a favorite hymn?
What?
A favorite hymn. A hymn they would like to sing. Okay, Jessica. 825 is the first requested song. Okay, 825. God never moves without purpose or plan. When trying his servant and molding a man, give thanks to the Lord, though your testing seems long. When darkness beginneth our song, oh, rejoice in the Lord. He makes us stand. We know at the end of each path that I take, for when I'm tried and purified, I shall come forth as gold. I could not see through the shadows ahead, so I looked at the cross of my Savior instead. I bowed to the will of the Master that made. Please me, please my way. Oh, rejoice in the Lord, He makes of this day. He knows at the end of each path that I take, for when I am tried and purified, I shall come forth as gold. Now one can see testing comes from above. God strengthens His children and purges in love. My Father's mercy is great, through burning of fruit I will bear. Oh, rejoice in the Lord, He makes us great. We know at the end of each path that I take, for when I'm tried and purified, I shall come forth as gold. 406. 406. In shady green pastures so rich and so sweet, God pleases their children alone. Where the waters flow flowing, the real ribbons green, God In the darkest of night, God leads his dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. Verse 4. Away from the mire, away from the clay, God leads his dear children along. Away up in glory, eternity's day, God leads his dear children along. Some through the waters, some through the flood, some through the fire, but all through the blood. Some through great sorrow, but God gives a song in the night season and all the day long. All right, Karsten. 534. 534. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I put him more and more. Jesus, precious Jesus, oh for grace to trust him more. Verse 2. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me beneath the healing cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh for grace to trust him more. Verse 4. I'm so glad I learned to trust him, precious Jesus, single friend, and I know that he is with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him more and more. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, grace to trust him more. Okay, all right. Sam, you got a song? Okay. Looked like you were struggling over there. Maybe you were wanting to provide us the next number. No. Okay, Mariah. 805. Okay. Uh-huh. God sent his son, they called him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive. He lived and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave was there too. My Savior lives, because he lives. for Facebook Messenger for Consider the Lilies, but I just looked while we were singing and I don't see it in the hymn book. I don't see it in the hymn book. We could Google the lyrics, but do you know that song, Consider the lilies, they don't toil or fret. No, okay. Well, all right. Well, I'm sure we probably wouldn't have done it much justice anyway to our watching friends. We appreciate anybody that is not able to make it out, but is still joining us in, via the technology of the day. So sorry about not being able to fulfill that request, but probably, I know how our audio is. I've heard that the preaching is usually better than the music on Wednesday nights. So I think that was a nice way of saying get to the book, which we will. We'll get to the book. Did you have a song, Chris? 348. Okay. All right. Now, we don't have to only sing carols. This is good. Okay. Redeemed. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Redeemed, how I love to proclaim. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed through His infinite mercy. His child forever I am. Redeemed, redeemed. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed. His child forever I am. Verse 2. Redeemed and so happy in Jesus. No language my rapture can tell. I know that the light of His presence with me doth continually dwell. Redeemed, redeemed. Redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed. His child forever I am. One more on verse 4. I know I shall see in His beauty the King in whose law I delight, who lovingly guardeth my footsteps and giveth me songs in the night. Redeemed, redeemed, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Redeemed, redeemed. His child forever I am.
Okay, any other songs? One more. Okay, Nehemiah. Yep. 118. 118. All right. And Karen, I think I saw your hand back there too, so maybe we'll sing another song too. Did you have a good one? Okay, we'll do that one too. We'll do that one too. I don't know what 109 is, but it'll be good. It's got to be good. Okay, all right. What child is this? This is my joke. I say this song was written for Volinia, You ever been like, you see these parents who keep having kids and you're like, so which one is that now? Which child is this? And then one runs past you in the hallway, and then another one runs past you. Which child is this? 118, 118. Yeah. It's a bad joke. Okay, 118. What child is this? This is talking about Christ, though. This isn't talking about.
What child is this who lays to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping?
All right, 109. 109 will wrap us up tonight, I think. All right. Came upon midnight clear. It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. Peace on the earth, goodwill to men, from heaven's all gracious King. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Let's sing verse 4. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing. All right, okay. All right, get into your Bibles here, and we're over to the first epistle written to the Thessalonians. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. Very nice playing. That was nice. Okay, 1 Thessalonians. We are just walking through this book on Wednesday nights and praying and learning about this. And if I were to retitle the book of Thessalonians, I would be tempted to retitle this book something like Paul's letter written to us, care of the Thessalonians, or something like that, because well, I'll just tell you, and you can watch for it, and maybe I'll point it out again. But in the next couple verses that we're going to go through, and we're already down into chapter 2, but in several of the verses that we'll look at tonight, Lord willing, he says, as you know, or as you have already been witness to the fact, or as ye remember. He keeps on saying these things, which means that they already know they already know these things that he's writing to them. Well, if they already know that, and I know you can remind people of it, and that's fine, and that's what he's doing. But if they already know these things, then he wasn't writing this information to let them know it, was he? And so as we step back from just Paul with Silvanus and Timotheus writing a letter to the Thessalonians, if we just kind of step back and see God's greater purpose for inspiring his word, we can be assured that this letter is for our information. Even perhaps even more than for their information, and I'm just getting that because he keeps saying, you already know this, and again, he's reminding them and he's emphasizing that, but they already know these things. And he starts saying that in chapter 1 verse 5, ye know what manner of men we were among you for your sake. And so back in your mind, in that part of your mind that's dedicated to the book of Acts and the process of after Christ ascended and gave the Holy Spirit to be their comforter, and the disciples, they had the day of Pentecost, and and then the really people were believing and meeting together, and really you see the growth of Christians there, even without Christ, right? Even without Jesus. So it's hard to tell when you go through the gospel accounts if these are real Christians or if these are just fickle crowds, right? Have you ever read a story and wondered that? That's very strange to me. These people that are crying out, "Crucify him," because the chief priests and scribes convinced them to shout to Pilate the governor, "Release unto us Barabbas." Right? They convinced them of that. Well, weren't those the same crowds that a couple days earlier were shouting, "Hosanna, Hosanna"? We have the Messiah. We have the leader that we've been looking forward to, and we're going to have a little triumphant entry, a little ceremony. We're going to have a little pomp here. Get your branch, lay down your blanket or your jacket, and here comes Jesus. This is just like prophecy. This is him. It's our Messiah. Hosanna, save us now. And yet, are these believers? Are these just crowds? Are they? What's going on here? But now, after Jesus is gone, you see persecution on believers. It's not the in thing anymore. And then you see real, strength even in persecution. I mean, it has to be real if you're going to speak up for Christ, even at your own life's peril. I'm a Christian. That man, Jesus, he is the Messiah. He died for me. He rose again. My friend saw him alive, and I believe. And I don't know what you're going to do with me, but I believe. And I know Rome doesn't want me to believe, and I know that religious guy that I looked up to all my life doesn't want me to believe, but I believe, right? And then of course Saul is introduced to us as a persecutor, right? Growing up and on his way to being some great leader in the Pharisee sect, but then the Lord gets his attention, and then he yields his life to the service of the Lord. And then where sin has abounded, grace does much more abound in Saul's life, Paul's life. And so now Paul is traveling around and giving the gospel of Jesus Christ in synagogues, right, where he is very comfortable and knows all about that kind of life. But he's giving the gospel there, and then little groups of believers are springing up, and that's exciting. And now he writes to them. But he writes to them a bunch of things that they already know, which is really helpful to us, right? Because if he just skipped everything that they already knew, then we would be left with a couple paragraphs, right? So this is great. All right, now we left off a couple verses into chapter 2, and so let's just start there, just because it's a convenient place here. So chapter 2 says, "For yourselves, brethren, know," see, here it is again, you know this, "our entrance in unto you, that it was not in vain." Okay, well, it wasn't fruitless. Something came from that, and that was great. Verse 2, "But even after that we had suffered before, and were shamefully entreated, as ye know," boy, there it is, man, he's saying that all the time, "at Philippi we were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention." Okay, now I reiterated this last week, but if it may be good to just remind you, Paul's going through this missionary journey, right? And he goes through, and he's going to go back to the region of Asia, not the continent of Asia, but the region of Asia, and he has the Macedonian call. And God gives him a vision of a man from Macedonia. He says, "Come on over here." And then Paul goes across the channel over to Macedonia. And Macedonia is a different place. And we got Philippi over there, and Thessalonica, and Berea. And then below Macedonia is Achaia, and then we get down to where Corinth is, way down by the Mediterranean Sea. But he goes over there, and what happens? Oh man, he is treated roughly. And you go over in Acts 15, 16, and 17, and you see that he's treated roughly, and they already knew that. And we already knew that because we can read Acts. But he says, after we've suffered before, we're shamefully entreated, as you know, at Philippi. Oh man. But we were bold in God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention. And that's kind of where we left off last week. And I was just challenging you. What is it that you are really passionate about? What is it that you, if people didn't like you for it, you would still do it? For Paul and Silas and Timothy, it was the gospel. It was the gospel. They were going to give the gospel. It doesn't matter how many times we're locked up. It doesn't matter how many times we're threatened. It doesn't matter how many times we're beaten or stoned or shipwrecked. Our life is given to the gospel. We have this unending zeal to see the gospel message shared. And I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get that shared. And in a little bit, he's going to say, I'm going to work tirelessly so that other people aren't burdened by me, so that I can kind of, earn my own money and people don't have to pay for my stuff, so that they'll hear the gospel. It's the gospel. The death and resurrection of Christ, that he is the king, that his kingdom is what we are really here to be involved in, and not our little kingdoms. That is Paul's boldness. And I'm ashamed that far too often I'm wrapped up in my own little kingdom and not in God's kingdom. And the little kingdom of my, whatever. And, sometimes we label these things hobbies, or we label these things pastimes, or we label these things careers, or we label these things all kinds of other things. But that's not what we're here for, and that's not what Paul was here for. In verse 3, for our exhortation, and he's writing again, they already know this, but he's letting them know we were mistreated, but we're still bold in the gospel. Verse 3 is really where we left off. For our exhortation was not of deceit, nor of uncleanness, nor in guile. Okay, so Paul, again, and this is a little bit of a defense of his ministry, but a little bit of a reminder and a little bit of help for us. We weren't there. We didn't see him. He didn't go there really like selling anything, but pretending that he was a minister of the gospel. There are so many people that are Christians right now that it is a positive thing in the United States to call yourself a Christian. And if you sell insurance, right? And if you, not that insurance is bad to sell, but if you sell insurance, it's a good thing to kind of be a Christian. And then you can kind of drop that if the person isn't a Christian, right? You can kind of, but Paul, what's Paul saying? His exhortation was not of deceit, nor of uncleanness, nor in guile. By the way, there are excellent insurance salesmen out there, right? I'm not against insurance. Get yourself some good insurance and buy it from a good Christian guy. That's good. And good agents are hard to find, and they deserve their commissions. But anyway, that's not what Paul was doing. There wasn't some deceit. There wasn't some uncleanness. There wasn't some guile. He wasn't a charlatan, right? Selling out something to benefit himself. He wasn't lying. He wasn't trying to be some leader and to get some kind of public notoriety. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't a charlatan. He wasn't going around with anything other than, in verse 4, but as we are allowed of God to be put in trust with the gospel, even so we speak. Wow. What a precious cargo he's carrying. What a message that he would speak of the message of the gospel. And, to our shame, we're a little flippant about the gospel, aren't we? We've heard it a million times. We've given it a million times. Okay, the gospel. But this was precious to Paul, and it should be precious to us. It's life. It's death to everything that we want to be dead to, and it's life to everything that we want to be alive to. It's the gospel. And he says, as we were allowed, this is like a poetic way of praising God for putting him in the ministry. As we're allowed of God to be put in trust with the gospel, even so we speak. Not as pleasing men, but God, which trieth our hearts. Now, this doesn't mean that Paul can't avoid some distractions. In fact, we know that Paul did make an attempt to be all things to all men, so that by any means he may save some, right? That he wants to see people accept the gospel. He wants to make it easy for them to do that. But what he's saying here is he's not going into these towns trying to make people happy. And we could see that if he was selling something, or if he was some kind of politician, or if he was going out, hey, let's fight against the Romans, then he would have a bunch of men that were pleased with his statement. But that's not what he was doing. He was just going with God's message, just going with the gospel, just trying to please God, which trieth our hearts. And there again, he's talking about God, and God, God is the witness to this. God is going to try my hearts. Our hearts, and we're not worried about what you think. Hopefully you agree with what the scripture says and who Christ was, but God is going to be the one that tries our hearts. Verse 5, for neither at any time used we flattering words, as ye know, there it is again, as ye know. They knew Paul. As you know, nor a cloak of covetousness, God is witness. See that cloak there, that is what God can see through. I could be covetous. I could have some other motivation in my heart. I could be focused and have the wrong priority, and that could be some kind of cloak of covetousness. But Paul says, no, that wasn't true. God is our witness. God sees through every cloak. Verse 6, nor of men sought we glory, neither of you, nor yet of others. I wasn't trying to make friends. This is also the same thing as he says in Galatians. In the book of Galatians, let me flip over there. In Galatians chapter 1. And in verse 10. For do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I had pleased men, I should not be the servant of Christ. Wow. Later on in Galatians 4:16, he says, Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? The truth needs to be told, and Paul was going to serve them as best as he could, and he was pointing out, don't make me your enemy. I'm trying to tell you the truth here. But back in Thessalonians, he's doing the same thing. It's the same message. It's the same manner. I'm going to give you the gospel. I'm going to come in here, and even in verse 6, as we just looked, he says, when we might have been burdensome as the apostles of Christ, right? We're really not trying to get glory from you, even though we could have. We're spokesmen for Christ, so we have every right to come in here and say, yes, you that believe, you're Christ's, and you're part of his kingdom, and we are Christ's servants. So in the name of Christ, take care of us. Right? A workman is worthy of his hire. The Old Testament gives a precedent for this, or you're not supposed to muzzle an ox that's treading out the corn. If you are being blessed by God through us, then you have a physical responsibility to take care of. But he wasn't even going to do that. It's almost like they got together and they said, listen, have you ever noticed it might be a little distracting to get paid and to worry about that? Why don't we just work hard, and then we won't be a burden to anybody, and then that might clear the way for the gospel to be heard a little better. Yeah, let's do that. I'm willing to work hard. You will? Yeah, let's just work. We'll eat of our own selves. That way nobody has anything cluttering the back of their mind, wondering if we were just there to make money or to get money from them. No, let's do it that way. But instead, verse 7, right? Instead of being burdensome, verse 7, we were gentle among you, even as a nurse cherisheth her children. Wow. Okay, so instead of requiring you to nourish us, we were there supplying what you most needed. We were there. We were gentle among you. And that really is an encouragement and an instruction to me to see that Paul, in the introduction, really in chapter 1, verse 5, you know what manner of men we were among you. This church knew Paul and Silas and Timotheus and Luke. They knew what kind of people they were. And then Paul it's easy for Paul to say, we were gentle among you. We were gentle. Even as a nurse cherisheth her children. In verse 11 it says, as a father doth his children. A nurse and a father, do children make mistakes? Yeah, they do. And is there correction? Yeah. But there's also instruction, and there's also nourishing. There's also like supplying everything that you need. And I'm not going to let a mistake. Listen, I'm a father. I'm not going to let a child's mistake stop them from getting what they need to become a mature, God-honoring adult. You don't understand what I mean by that? Let's get them through that. Let's get them past it. Listen, it may not even be sin. It may just be, okay, this isn't done the right way. Let's give them instruction. Or it may be sin, and they need the chastening, and they need the correction as well as the instruction. But as a father, you get them through that quickly so that they can get back on the right path of where they need to be. They got a long road ahead of them. How ridiculous would it be to take my 4-year-old and to look at him doing something and to go, that's it. I had high hopes for him. I don't know. Okay. All right. Honey, let's start over. I don't know what you're going to do about that. No, you correct him, and then he responds, and then you correct him again, and you correct him again, and correct him again. For some reason, my 4-year-old loves the feeling of being hoisted in the air, like way up, like weightless in the air. And he loves that most when the couch cushion is the one that's doing the hoisting, right? That's just a lot of fun. Until Dad rounds the corner. Then in our home, by the way, if you visit, you may sit, you may lay down on the couch. Those are approved, right? Chris, sit or lay down on the couch. That's all you got. We don't. No jumping on the furniture. Okay. Anyway, Paul was gentle, and he was cherishing. Cherishing is is giving there, and there's even in the definition is the idea of warmth, right? There is giving this. It's almost the idea of you've got like a bird egg, right? And everybody knows, right? Remember third grade biology, right? You gotta keep the egg warm, right? You gotta incubate it for a certain, and then it's gonna hatch and be healthy. That's this idea. We gotta keep it warm, and that's amazing that Paul did that and used that as an illustration. Verse 8. So being affectionately desirous of you. Wow, the manner, Paul's manner, Silas's manner with them, affection. You know, depending on your background, sometimes affection is almost like something you could do without, right? But Paul was affectionately desirous of these people. In a good way, right? That's not bad. Remember, he didn't have any deceit or uncleanness or guile. He was affectionately desirous of him. And what does it say in verse 8? We were willing to have imparted unto you not only the gospel of God only, but also our own souls, because you were dear unto us. Sacrificial love for these folks. Sacrificial love. That's agape love. And by the way, what are they known for now? If you go back to chapter 1, verse 3, their work of faith, their labor of love, that's agape. And where did they learn this agape love? I mean, Christ is living in them now, but where did they learn it? Well, look at verse 5. You know what manner of men we were among you for your sake. Verse 6, and ye became followers of us and of the Lord. How did they learn sacrificial love? Affectionate, desirous love that is sacrificing yourself for them. They learned it from Paul and from his companions. We weren't just going to give you the gospel only, but our own souls because you were dear unto us. Now that's the difference. You can hand somebody a tract, and that's a good thing to do if you're in a hurry and if you're just passing. Please take advantage of that opportunity. But what is amazing is when you sacrifice your life for them. And I'm not talking about taking a bullet or jumping on a grenade. I'm talking about you give your life. You give minutes. You give hours. You give money. You give groceries. You see a problem and you take care of that problem because you love somebody. That is being affectionately desirous. And then what happens? We can give the gospel very easily. Ho ho ho. What did John the Baptist say? I know he cleared the way for Christ, but what do you say? Make his path straight. Get everything out of the way. And boy, what a good job Paul and Silas did of that by serving, and then when they gave the gospel. And what does it say in John 1? We beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So who did this better than anyone? Who was full of this? The truth that Christ presented was preceded by grace. Grace and truth. And when you serve somebody, then you can easily give them the gospel. Okay? Don't dump the gospel, right? I'm not talking about social gospel, right? Oh, they'll figure that we're Christians. Give them the gospel. Represent Christ by name, right? Do that. Give them the gospel, but serve people. Serve people. Your influence will grow as you serve people. And so, and then this is what I'm excited about. We have the honor, like Paul says, as we were entrusted, right? What did he say? As we're allowed of God to be put in trust with the gospel, as we're entrusted with the gospel, and as we serve people and we grow in influence in their lives, what's exciting that our influence, we can take any influence that we have and we can just turn it right over to Christ. That's exciting. That's exciting. I when I work with teenagers, that's what I do with parents also, right? Parents, that's good. Authority. I mean, that's Christ also, because that's the God-given authority of where we do it, right? You know what I mean by that? Teenagers, okay, so teenagers come to an activity. I hate life. Right? You know teenagers. I don't like myself, and I don't like anybody except that pretty girl and that athletic guy. They're cool. They're the only ones I like. Celebrities on TV. Right? Does this look familiar? And then what happens? Boom! Like flash of light, lightning bolt. Here comes this youth pastor, and I've got games, and I've got prizes, and I've got exciting voices, and I've got slides on the wall. And sometimes teenagers go, oh, he's cool. And then teenagers say, hey, I was listening, and those verses made sense, and there's something going on in my life, and I wonder if I could talk to you about it. And I said, well, sure, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And then they say, would you pray for me about my friend, or would you pray for me about this issue? And then a week or two later, youth pastor can walk up and say, hey, Carlton, whatever, I don't know his name, and he goes like this, oh, you remembered my name, oh. And I say, hey, how's this issue going on in your life? I've been praying for you. And then all of a sudden I go, this guy's like different, like he's like spiritual and stuff, and I want to be just like him, and I want to be a youth pastor when I grow up. Okay, I am like totally way too broadly generalizing all of teenagers, so forgive me for this. And then what is that? So I've got a little bit of service invested in him, and now I've got some, he sees that I'm genuine. When that breaks through, then all of a sudden, right, now I've got some influence. And what I love to do at that point is I love to take all the influence that they's built up in me, and I love to go, you know who you really should be listening to? Oh, no, tell me. I'll do anything you say. That they don't say that, but that's kind of their, this. Cool. I'll do anything. You say, you should be listening to your parents. Yeah, I should. And then I get a text from a happy parent. Like, I don't know what's going on with Carlton, but he like did the dishes the other day, and he didn't even complain. And I'm like, oh, great. And then now I know what to, if there's any other youth ministry going on, or future youth ministry going on, that's when you pray. That's when you pray, because everything is about to shake out in that home now, right? Because you know what happens when Carlton comes home and does the dishes without complaining? The parents don't know what to do. And then when the parents argue with each other, they're like, maybe we should. Then there's like the spiritual pressure just rises in that home, right? And that's okay. This is just the process. Then you know what happens when Carlton comes home and he says, I made a commitment at youth group that I wasn't going to watch any TV until after I read my Bible for the day. Then the parents are like, maybe we should turn this off, or maybe you should go to your bedroom. Right? That's rough. Anyway, all that that's that may be just a little too much information, but it's hard. So that's when you start praying, because parents have a lot of influence, and so So dump the influence on parents. And for us, we get to do that with Christ. And guess what? With Christ, man, it's the greatest, because he doesn't fail anybody. He doesn't fail anybody. Parents will fail. I'll fail my kids. It's going to happen. It's happened before. It's going to happen. But Christ doesn't fail, so you can confidently go before. Why are you doing this? Oh, because, like, what's different about you? Okay, well, I'm a child of the King, and I'm a member of this kingdom, and everything's going to be taken care of. And I just already know that. So I'm not worried about this, and this, and this that every member of this kingdom is worried about. And what I want to share with you is that you can be a part of that kingdom too. The King is awesome. He owns everything, and he adopted me. Not only did he adopt me, I mean, that's like the best part, but like I did him wrong, and I deserve to be in like the deepest, darkest dungeon forever. And he pulled me out of that. And not only is that awesome, but he did the opposite also. He lifted me up, and now I have a home with him. Like, I'm his son. I'm his co-heir with his son, Christ. And this is just awesome. And I get to spend my life inviting you to join him. And it's awesome. And this is the best. So yeah, what's different about me? I mean, this is just, everything's different. Everything's different when we remember that we're part of his kingdom. So as Paul is serving them, he gets to give them the gospel. And that's what we get to do too. And that's amazing. Keep serving people. And as your influence grows, then throw it all right on Christ. And that's fantastic. Okay. Because you were dear unto us, verse 9, for ye remember, so this is another way of saying for ye remember, brethren, our labor and travail, for laboring night and day, because we would not be chargeable unto you, any of you. We preached unto you the gospel of God. We worked hard. We weren't chargeable. Nobody owed us anything. There's no behind the scenes chitter chatter about how genuine we really are. We're just here to serve you and to give you the gospel. Verse 10, ye are witnesses, and God also. See, ye are witnesses. That's another way of saying you already know this. This is something that you've seen. Ye are witnesses, and God also, how holily and justly and unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe. Wow, we're gentle to you, just like a nurse. We're going to justly and unblameably behave to you. In verse 11, as ye know, again, how they already know this, but as ye know how we exhorted and comforted and charged every one of you as a father doth his children. Now this is great. These words are full of fatherhood, like he says, and exhorted is come alongside. Come on over here, and let's do something together. And then there's comfort, and then there's the charge. And here's kind of the picture. I'm going to teach you how to do something with all the encouragement and all the gentleness that you need. But it's just like that father saying, come on up here, son. Let me show you how to, drive this tractor, right? And that's what exhort means. Come on up here. We're going to do this together. Let's walk the same direction. You do what I'm doing as I'm doing it with Christ. And this turns into fellowship, and this turns into, exhorting one another. We're helping each other do this. But come on up here, and I'm actually going to demonstrate to you how I do this, and you're going to learn from being with me and from doing what I do, and it's all relational, and that's why the picture of fatherhood fits so perfectly. But this is so important to me because I don't know why, but when I when I was a teenager, or when I read my Bible, and I hate to blame teenhood, right? That's really no excuse, but when I read my Bible a little bit, I always kind of thought that people in these churches were always being like, that Paul was always throwing down on them, like I know how to walk with God, and you don't know how to walk with God, and this is how you walk with God, and you need to shape up, and you guys are failing at every turn. And there are times when failures are addressed, but really what Paul is doing is he's getting them through the things that they need to get through very very compassionately and very gently. And when it says here that they don't have anything that they can be blamed for, verse 10, unblameably we behaved, it doesn't say that they were sinless or that they never had a problem, but that they can't be blamed. And if you have a little problem in your life and you fail in somebody's life, we have this restoration through Christ that we can practice, and you can apologize, and you can repent and apologize and ask for forgiveness and be restored and continue to serve them. And that's the way that it should be. And even though it says here that they were unblameable, it doesn't mean that he never messed up, but that whenever he messed up, it got taken care of. And it reminds me of when he writes to Timothy in 1 Timothy 3, and he's giving the qualifications for a bishop, right? A bishop must be blameless. That doesn't mean perfect. It means that there's nothing that's wrong, that's undealt with in his life. The husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, good behavior, given to hospitality, apt to teach, not given to wine, no striker. So there's kind of that gentleness idea. Not greedy of filthy lucre. There's that idea that he didn't come in with guile and seeking his own. But patient, not a brawler, not covetous. You know what Paul, in a way, is saying? He's saying this is what a man of God should act like when he is an example. And Peter later says, feed the flock, be an example. And Paul is describing somebody that would be a great example and a great leader. But when we look back in 1 Thessalonians, and we're done for tonight, but what we already saw about Paul in 1 Thessalonians is this is how he treated people. And this is how he's training Timothy to treat people. And these are the things that are important. And the qualifications, it's not an exhaustive list, but he said this is the type of person that can lead people with Christ, that can exhort and comfort and be patient and gentle and not a brawler, but can teach people to walk with the Lord. And then he says to the Thessalonians, you guys saw how we acted, you saw our manner, and then you became followers of us. And now you've got that you've got that patience, you've got that hope, you've got that love that's working and that's helping everybody around you. And that's exciting, to be a part of that. And Christ is doing that in us, when we allow him to, right? When we get off on our selfish little... Excuse me. Yeah. Bless you too. Yeah. And that's exciting to be a part of. God can work in us, and God can change us, and then we can help others. And Paul sure did help these folks. And I suppose it's for us, and it's to remind them, but it's also probably the reason he's mentioning all this is I think he's reteaching them again. You saw us, and you became followers of us, but remember to follow this and this and this, and remember what we did and how we handled this, and these little processes, and this is how God worked in our life so that our contact with you was not in vain, and now you can work the same way in other people's lives, and we can spread the gospel. full of grace and truth. Christ was. All right. Okay. Thanks for listening. I'm going to move my sticky note down here. Oh, yeah. And next time we get to chat about what Paul was exhorting and comforting and charging them to do. And it gets good. It gets good. Okay, so we've got some prayer sheets here. We're going to spend some time in prayer, asking the Lord to help us. Anything else that needs to be put on the prayer list here? Josiah is the name of your friend? Okay. Josiah's daughter. Yep. Yeah, so like Cassandra was saying, there's a lot of people that aren't necessarily named here, but maybe they're on the prayer thread and lots of different people. So keep praying for everybody that's not feeling well. Some of them very serious too. Okay. Yep. Okay. Anybody else? You might.
Youngest sister lost one of her sons, and that's why our family is kind of hit and miss with who's safe and who's not. And they're also, the church ones that are saved, it's kind of hard to tell how much they are saved or if they're just following their parents. And the churches kind of push them because they're more of the beating them to submission, conviction kind of way. So there's not a lot of like actual understanding of Christ and like how it's supposed to work. So just pray for the, and our families aren't supposed to go to the funeral because they're all worried about COVID because he died of COVID. So they're kind of just worried about that. But like, so that the gospel is spread and not fear. So that's how everything else is an issue of fear, but people dying and stuff like that.
Okay. All right. I like it. General family. So a family member died, and that the gospel would triumph and not fear. Yeah, especially fear of COVID, because he died of COVID, and then they're all really hesitant to even get together with the funeral. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to blame people, isn't it? Because if somebody dies of COVID, it'd be really easy to sit around in a funeral and say, should we all be this close to each other at this funeral? So I don't envy those that have hard choices to make during this time. So, okay, keep praying for each other. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Oh, Erin Mosier? Okay, I didn't know. Was she sick?
She's not quite over, but she's been going through
Okay.
it, and also she's concerned about that too. It just seems like there's a lot right now.
Okay. A lot going on in the Mosier's home. Okay, sure. Yes, Marina's grandmother is looking like that she's going to pass away soon, so that's hard. I think Marina's very close to her, so was very close to her, so it'll be tough. So keep Marina in prayer, not just for her health, but also concerning her grandma. Okay, anybody else? Okay, well, let's spend some time in prayer together.